single week that will never burn you. And thank you for letting us put us up there, because we're really just trying to have the conversation. Why are things getting so strange? And like a machine gun fire just doesn't stop. It's more intense, the next. It's called tunnel vision, where they put so many events out at you that you can't even focus. But we want to notice that, and we want to talk about the tunnel vision. So Ransom, how's the we're streaming where? We're up on Rumble tonight. I know that on the Adapt 2030 channel. I think we're up on YouTube. Last week we had a little trouble getting up onto the 2 different YouTube channels. Mini Ice Age Conversations podcast YouTube channel, which is going to simulcast to the new Civilization Cycle channel. And where else would we be, Ransom? Tell us.
We should now be on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all of the YouTubes right now. So they just all popped on. No, the restreaming started the whole new format. I've been back and forth. They changed their coding. So evidently I was this whole time using a backdoor into the programming. And they have a whole interface set up that you're supposed to be using. I've never used it. I just been backdooring the stream keys through and it all worked. So the guy I was talking to at the place literally didn't seem to know how it worked as good as I did, which is weird. But I blew their minds. You got
the trial version. Perfect.
Yeah. I blew their minds. I had to, screenshot and do video, of all of the stuff because they literally didn't believe their programming did that. And I showed them that it did. And then they got a whole new system set up now. And it didn't work just now. The other way was way faster the way I was doing it. But we should be live everywhere as far as I know now. We're just like everywhere out there in cyberspace at this point.
Fully, man.
Yeah, let me check all the feeds and make sure that they're going because some of them don't go through Restream. I have to set them up independently.
Yeah, so that's why we are saying, please buy us a double espresso because we're trying to pay for wider servers also to get more reach out on the net so we can stream to, maximum 12 off of the service we have right now with Restream. We can stream off to 12 different channels, right?
I think it's 15 now.
Oh, 15. Okay. So that's our, we've been adding all the channels and you can find us. You know what I need to do? I need to go to that link tree and update all those things as well. So note to self, that's kind of a work night for me anyway. So I'll put that down as one of my notes, link tree, and I'll get you every single one of the platforms we're on that we stream to live. So you just go to one site and then click on it. And that would be either Linktree or come to our new website, civilizationcycle.com, and we'll have a button there just to click on to Linktree and go. See, it's a work night. That's something like that. My mind is busy.
Yeah, sooner or later we'll just be because I guess what it is some of the streaming softwares, I don't know if it's, social media sites seem to have different rules and stuff, almost like they're trying to compete to make sure people can't, talk on one voice on all the channels at once. I mean, think about that. That's the power of old school television. You could just talk to almost everyone.
Yeah, you see how that's being stifled just to stop the conversation. But see, this is where we would say, please buy us a double espresso because we need to find workarounds. So if it's another piece of software, it's another sign in, another account to be had with another fee on top of that. Well, we're going to get it because we want to be able to take that one channel and get it out because it's really kind of important. Now there's a lot of changes and that's no BS assessment. Seriously. If any of you have seen the Adapt 2030 channel since, a decade ago, that's crazy to even say that. We have been talking about this time where you will get this very clear signal that everything would have come up in the economy and the agriculture and the population migration and all these things are going to intersect like they do every grand solar minimum. And we are here again because in October, the planets are squaring off. And that same square with Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune has not been seen since 79 AD. And then all of this is happening right now. And we're supposed to believe, okay, this planetary geometry. And what I mean is Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune make a square. out in the outer solar system, like in one quadrant of the square of the solar system, just a square in one particular location out of that whole circle of 360 degrees. All four of those are in a square, very tight in just one tiny part of the solar system. The last time it did that with this precise squareness was 79 AD. Now, I'm really kind of baffled because of something of this magnitude and duration on a cycle itself, to where the planets sit in the heavens to create this square. And then all of these things we're seeing is ramping up this energetic like change. I just can't explain it except they're all connected together. So anyway, I digress. You were saying something. I just go ahead, man. I was talking about Linktree or something, and I lost my thought.
No, I was just babbling about how, kind of cool we are in the future where we could get on all kinds of feeds and say a message in live time to people. Well, that's as long as free speech lasts. And, if you've been paying attention around the world, that is becoming a very, very limited resource. So I would imagine that free speech is like gold at this point. If you're allowed to have it, it's worth its weight in gold, so to speak. It's kind of like my grandpa used to tell me that if I wished in one hand and, kind of took a dump in the other, he used to, ask me which one would fill up faster. Well, free speech, it seems, is, like I said, it's a very limited resource. I mean, people all over in Europe are finding that out with knocks on the door. Things that you couldn't imagine. Like if you would have went back and told people right after World War II in any one of the European countries that in 80 years you'll be outpopulated, you yourself will become known as a terrorist in your own country, and your voice will land you in jail for having opinions, they might have thrown rocks at you because they thought you were too crazy, but no, to get serious. I've been delving into this die-off plateau of the Western world, and it seems to be just delayed in the third world by just a couple years. Here, I was going to send you a graph because I know you like graphs. Let me see if I can send it over to you real quick. And I'm showing everybody.
Lover. You can see a lot of data in the graphs. Like if you can edit voice, like the podcast, the civilizationcycle.com or the Civilization Cycle podcast, one and the same podcast page, right? So I'm always looking through the audio in the same way that you would look at audio in the voice when you're editing it is very much the same thing that you would see in cycles, in charts. Over thousands of years of temperature variance up and down, it's readable just like you can see the human voice moving up and down. And that's why how you know where to splice it, where to cut it, where to fade out, fade in. That's that change that you can see. Something had changed in the voice to a point where it could be cut or snipped. Same thing, you see these climate charts, they come down and there's ebbs and flows in these charts. And that ebb and flow for me is the rise and a fall of a civilization based on how much food that society / civilization could produce at the time for the amount of people that were there. And if the production of agriculture declined, then obviously the number of people will decline with that. You can't have they can't coexist. They have to follow each other in a formula.
I would agree with that. And, I've taken the science into my own hands because, they tell you to trust the science. So I'm going to trust the science in the graphs. And from any topic I found lately, if you just line up graphs over time, for some reason, the narrative of each topic doesn't match the raw data. And I'm showing everybody a change in the number of births from 2022 to 2023. And this is a pretty good list. It's not a list of all the countries, but it's a lot of them. So we got the Philippines, Thailand, Malaysia, Norway, Denmark, United States, the Netherlands, Spain, Brazil, Hungary, Australia, Switzerland, Italy, Finland, New Zealand, Sweden, Japan, China, Croatia, Germany, Greece, Austria, France, Singapore, South Korea, Colombia, Czech Republic, Ireland, and Poland. So a pretty good diverse range, and that pretty much summed up all the power players as well. And when you look through this graph, there's only like 4 countries having children. They're having children up any. So every other country is in the negative. So you start at Denmark, it's not that bad, 1.9. United States also at 1.9. Now, this number may not make that much sense to someone until they look at the fertility rate. But this graph shows that there's been a severe reduction in the number of births between the year of 2022 and 2023. Now, I would suggest that that trend is continuing into 2024, 2025, 2026, and for the next decade. And here's another one: fertility rate, total births per woman. And you can clearly see on here, there's very few countries in the world that are producing a positive birth rate in the year of 2022. But this little graph over here at the side that shows you the overall trend is going down, even for the ones that are producing a lot. And basically, the entire world is now not creating enough kids to replace themselves. Now, when you start adding other demographics data to this, like the most medicated countries in the world, or the least, you'll find out that the least medicated countries have a great birth rate and a great fertility rate for some reason. But the Western world, not so good. All of the main countries are going down, 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 not only in fertility, but birth rate. And I'm not talking about just like a little bit. This graph shows that the main graph on this website, which is from the World Bank Group, fertility rate totals and births per woman. It starts out in 1960, and it actually goes down there. They had, Vietnam War. For some reason, people weren't having that much children. But by the mid 60s was the peak for the world at 5.3. And then the number just goes down and down and down. Even though they're telling you that the world is overpopulated, the overall number of people being produced, i.e., then replacing the population that exists right now, is just going down, 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 to the point where some countries are in danger of not existing in only 20 years. And that's a variety of countries, like Japan is a good one to pick out. And then you have the European countries that are not producing European people. I guess I can say it that way. They're not having offspring. But when you look at the graph of this, and you keep going, my point is, without getting in trouble here, is that if you just keep looking at these countries and correlating these different things, like life expectancy, here's one that shows most people on average, even around the world, are about 81 to 84 years old for women and about 75 years old for men. And this is like on average worldwide. You can go through there. Now, some countries are higher and lower, but only by a few years. So that means that this entire population here of these people that have this life expectancy are all going to die approximately the same time, and with no continued birth. And this is what's funny, is a lot of people think that, oh, don't worry about it. There's mass migration and the populations can get replaced by the new arrivals that don't have the same fertility rates. But the problem is those people, those categories now are also having low birth rate and a higher infertility rate and lower amounts of kids. And weirdly, the places that have the highest fertility rate are the countries that the powers that be are investing in and moving into, and it's the opposite areas where people are trying to migrate to, if that makes sense. So people are migrating out seemingly of the best areas of the world with the highest fertility rates and birth going on, and they're leaving, and then they're going to countries that have some kind of issue with procreation, which all of the numbers show that there's going to be a severe and an abrupt plateau, and then an ever increasing inclining number of no population. So I know I said that backwards. A declining population from here on out. And that's just the regular mathematics. That's none of the social engineering aspects of the formula. And if you start taking those into account, you'll see that the trend's going to get worse. So this seems to be timed at just the right time for a world war to increase that and make that more exponential. And then you're adding on less food production, which is a direct number to number ratio when it comes to food availability and health, population, and population growth. So the world is in a real conundrum. The question is why is no one talking about this conundrum that everyone seems to be in as far as procreation? It's almost a numerical fact that if something doesn't change dramatically in the Western world, there will be no Western world, at least in the way that people think about it now. It's just not going to exist. The population is going to be so different that will correspond with changing in culture, government, and everything else. So we're talking a complete transformation in the Western world to a new civilization, and that is happening in real time.
So my question would be, when did it happen last time? That same formula you're talking about, the peak population, the numerical effect of a declining population. And then with that decline, how long does that take to actually work itself through over the centuries and possibly millennia to get down to this base population with, again, the same recycled, quote unquote, technologies coming back up again, recirculating just in a new fashion. So when did it happen last time? Is that too bold of a question to ask? Ransom. Okay, I guess he went somewhere. He'll join us when he gets back. Appalachian Radio sent out a call for you there. It is Star Mountain. You got the pen handy? Something you can write down? 146.820 Star Mountain.
Is that where the aliens are picking us up?
That's the repeater, man. And once you get there, you can bump yourself up and go on up to Crossville and further points south of Chattanooga into Georgia. Star Mountain's a good one to get further afield from if you're just looking for a single frequency. Obviously, somebody will be there at some time. It's a busy one in terms of traffic coming through there. So I guess I'll leave it. I was going somewhere with that, because today we were checking our comms. We went up to Chirp and taking a look at our mag frequencies and seeing which ones were still, functional. And they've been doing radio checks through this because whatever happened during this stock market crash, it set everybody off that's in ham radio world to be able to start checking their comms. Like it was so almost instant. It was really almost they were waiting for it, and then that was it. That's the signal we're looking for. We already got the plans anyway. Go. And I feel very much the same way. This market, whatever happened, the reverberation. How does Japan drop the most ever in history, and then the very next day it comes up the most almost in history? And you can't tell. And then it shattered through the rest of the markets. Closed all these, just ruined Asia, and then suddenly, everything's okay today. No, there's still a huge amount of money that needs to come unwound. And this whole thing, whatever it is financially, through the airwaves, the banks, the interconnectivity of, the behemoth of these intertwined contracts that very few people understand how they're even written as insurance contracts on something that you bought, and then you split that 4 ways, and then those 4 banks, 4 institutions, 4, private houses come in and they say, we'll take that as a piece of it, and then they'll resell it on again, and they'll cut it up 4 ways into the next product for a next investment coming in. And like the family office will take some of that. like once it loses in an auto, you get auto stopped out. These things are just winding their way back at loss after loss after loss. The reason I'm saying this, whatever has happened, the ham community, at least out here where we are in Southeast Tennessee and further into Virginia and down in Georgia and North Carolina and way over through Nashville, everybody's testing comms right now. What is going on? With this, it seems so scripted. Like, what's the next big event to happen? Because whatever this one did, people are very aware that this was a gigantic shift, So that the new chapter we are entering, beginning as of this event, it's a new, for a better term, quickening, an intensification of quickening. What you saw from the Trump thing through the crowd strike to the Biden resignation, and then reverberations of stock markets, some possible arrests, some political theater over there that was big, and then whoosh. Like, that was a mini set of what it is to distract. Think about how much those major events were just all wound together as four things that you've already forgotten about. But it's the next bigger thing. Imagine if the market, all of them, what if they have to close the banks? They closed down so many markets during this, and then, I had these slides ready for you because I'm working on this video, and I wanted to tell you what was shocking for me is as this market was crashing, people were trying to decide whether to buy or to sell because there's huge opportunity. A lot of people were going short on this because they knew it would continue for a day or two. People like Ransom and myself could not sign into, and anybody out there, this is the list, 6 trading platforms they couldn't even access to sell into our stock market. Anybody who had a regular account, you got locked out of trading, which is, only the institutions, only the big companies could have gotten in on those gains or whatnot. There was no way to sell. So Charles Schwab went down, and Fidelity and Ameritrade and Citibank and E-Trade, Vanguard, Wells Fargo, Plaid, and then Robinhood. And then Robinhood suspended trading 100%, said no more trades, man, nothing, no crypto, stop. Like, everybody who had an account in that just got locked out of their money, completely locked out. They couldn't trade on those days as it was crashing. So for me, I was up late that night on that Sunday because I was, looking at Asia, and I saw coming through Telegram a bunch of stories about that it's crashing, and then I was like, wait a minute, I see something happening here. So like for me being up that late, I was about 6 hours ahead of people here waking up and seeing it because I was awake when it was happening versus getting up in the morning, seeing it and reacting to it at 6 a.m. when the news is already going huge crash, crashing at midnight here in America. So people woke up in the morning, be like, oh, okay, I want to get out. And nope, you can't tell me this is just some random thing happened with the net too. So I'm trying to weave some points together here. This is such a gigantic thing that they're proving to you that whatever you need to do electronically with your funds, with your stocks, bonds, mutual funds, IRAs, whatever it is, your savings account, your checking account, online, they're showing you that they can turn it off in an instant with zero access. And that's downright scary because if they're able to do it with what is considered people with money because they have extra money to own stocks and mutual funds and these sort of things, CDs, whatever, that they would get privilege to get into their accounts. But nope. That is insane that all of those 9 trading platforms went down at the same time in the same day and nobody could access it. And then the next day, wow, okay, it's back, but all the big institutional traders had come in and done their business. It's fascinating how Japan drops 12 to 14%. I'll have to get the exact number for you. Don't quote me on the exact. It's between 12 and 14%. It was the largest drop ever in Japanese history, ever. And that triggered the largest drop in Taiwan also in history. And then we got locked out of our stocks here. Now, that was a wealth transfer. That was pure and simple wealth transfer. Like, I can understand why the ham crowd and community is wanting to start to check their comms, right? Can you see that as a direct correlation there? Because if we're going to, people are seeing, wow, you're losing banking access, trading platform access. What if you lose the internet access? Then what's next? What if you lose your mobile phone access? See, that's the thing they're looking at. They're talking about a form of communication. So just walk that out with me. It's a form of communication. So if that major form of communication goes down, like the internet, and you're not able to get onto websites, then how are you going to communicate? Okay, that's one form. You can't even access it. So that I would consider that doesn't even work any longer. So those, you go into online banking in an emergency, okay, it's just not going to work. Don't even think it's going to work. Okay, what's the next plan then? So you probably want to find out what's going on around town first before you drive into town. But be cautious. If you go up to a roadblock or see, just don't even get close to that. Who was it? Craig Simpson. This is no BS here. Craig Simpson, he was over in Somalia. During that time, it was very close to that when that Black Hawk Down incident occurred that the famous movie was portrayed after. But he was telling me, like, when you come to a roadblock, don't go and drive up to the bumper of the car that's at the roadblock. Now, it could not be like maybe I'm not talking about a really organized police roadblock where they're waving you through. This is something like out in the countryside, a little bit on a country road or sort of like half main road. And cars are pulled up in both directions and they're stopped. When the people are out talking, he's like, don't approach that situation, just stay far back. So if you need to back up and get out of there, you have room to turn around. Because if you get too close to that bumper and then something else, another car comes up behind you, and I don't know, Craig had some crazy, just insane things to think about, but you are going to want to know for sure. Like, if the banking collapse were to occur, I was talking to Lynette Zhang, and she was saying 6 days is what you had. Once it all starts and the fear push, the fear phase starts, you get about 6 days maximum to get where you are. So then you start to think about, okay, well, day 1, 2, 3, people are confused. Day 4, 5, 6, if food's not coming to the stores, people are going to be, maybe stopping cars to see what's in them. Day 7, 8, 9, something like that. They're making their own little posses in the neighborhoods or in the local communities. The hoodlums are getting together or whatever form they take. And they're like, these are our neighborhood. These are all, we knew these back streets before you did. These kind of things. Little militias will form up around there. And then if you do see, you're going to want to know, you're going to have to learn how to use something outside of what we consider regular platforms of communication. Your phone doesn't work. Awesome. Well, then what are you going to move to? If you're close to a highway, CB radio, base station CB radio. Awesome. You can pick up on a lot of road traffic. I bet they're sharing stories left, right, and center. Because that's what you want. You want to get that flow of information. So if you're looking at different repeaters that get a lot more traffic, then that's one you would want to tune into. You don't necessarily need to broadcast, but you can listen and see what kind of traffic's coming across there. It's the same thing. Like if you can get on a busy repeater, or if you are near a highway and a base station on a CB set, you can get an enormous amount of information by the conversations of either trucks on the road, of people talking, chatting, of where they've been, where they're going to, what they saw, what they heard, versus the same thing. Okay, this town, that heard this happened here. And then you can hear that same traffic rolling through on, like I say, some of these more robust and used and wider footprint repeaters. So anyway, Ransom, I was going somewhere with that, but again, I think it was a sham, and I really think this was the starting gun. I can't really explain to you why, because this is a it's such a difficult event to explain that whatever was, we've left that. It's called almost like being in space. You ever see that where they undock and then the little pod floats away slowly in the anti-gravity, no atmosphere, and that one decoupled and it's drifting away back toward Earth while the little pod or whatever it's rocket stage continues forward toward the moon or something. That separation just occurred with this event. We're in a totally different phase right now. And they're broadcasting to you clearly, you are going to lose access to your banks, finance, banking, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. You're not going to be able to sign in to access any of it. It's so clearly broadcast here. So what is the plan? I hope somebody does have a plan anyway, Ransom. I was rambling. Go.
No, I think those cryptocurrency things and the Japanese yen thing were basically the same thing. Japan was, claiming that they were going to play with their rates, right? But then they didn't, which caused all kinds of weird repercussions in the stock markets. Actually, from what I could understand, is that if they didn't do that, the yen was going to fail. Excuse me, the yen, right? That's Japanese, right? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and that was going to fail, but also, they have super inflation like we do. They could have been in a Venezuela type situation real soon if they didn't kind of fake the market out to prop them up. So the question is when does that bubble actually pop? And the same question for the U.S. because we're doing the same thing. We're buying bonds. And then we're basing the money on those bonds, and then we print more money to buy the bonds. Where it goes, nobody knows where the money's even coming from or going, or what makes it worth anything at this point. So it's obviously, set up to fail. The only real resource out there that seems to be in play is real estate. And I'm talking about on a world stage because that seems to be what's going on. The reorganization of who owns what and where. That was a whole thing. I was watching, everybody freaking out about the Japanese thing, and people were saying, well, they're going to change the rates and then it'll fix it. But then they didn't, right? They didn't change it. I think that's what they just tricked the world market into propping their economy up for a little longer. So when does the U.S. do that? I think, right before that pops, if cycle is right, we got to have a war. That'll revalue everything. Not only that, it'll revalue everything, but that'll be the instrument in which they get you to get on these new platforms of money. I'm wondering, like where the lines are going to be redrawn, like what kind of new unions are going to be formed, because they don't seem to be joking around about the conflict going forward. You saw Russia just move their anti-defense systems into Iran. Iran's promising to bomb Israel. Israel's promising to bomb Iran, and they're already bombing some other people. And then quietly in the background,
who shot Nelly in the belly with a meatball, baby?
right? And then you got the Ukrainians with their new form, which I think actually is the precursor to the nightmares you're about to see all across Europe, which is drones flying up to things and blowing them up. There's going to have to be money that the governments are going to have to ask from its citizenry to develop new laser systems to take care of these drone threats. And I see this going a big deal because it works so well, seemingly, right? And you can mass produce them. And when we get into a conflict like that on a world scale, there's going to be one player in the midst of all that stands out more than everybody else, because they already have the infrastructure going to do that, and that is China. China is the one that is going to be the number one drone producer, especially if any kind of world conflict breaks out. And they're willing to, like I said, their population's already dwindling. They misestimated it in the first place, and then they had horrible policies leading up to a further collapse of this. So they're in some real trouble too. It's seemingly everybody in the world has a government collapse problem imminent. And it seems like they've all timed this final battle, or so to speak. They keep calling them final battles, but there'll be one after that, and there'll be one after that, because they need it to prop up these economies that are based on nothing. And the more and more that robotics take over the menial tasks that human beings are getting paid for in sweatshops around the world, the less and less they need massive amounts of labor, which goes into the equation of a worldwide population collapse. And, if you really think about it, they have all these different triggers, but at the same time, they've been talking about this for a long time. I mean, I don't think that the Georgia Guidestones got to sit there as like a public art piece for all that time if there wasn't some kind of significance to it. And when you read that population on there, that sounds about right. If you take into account the falling population rates around the world, catastrophic wars and famines that are bound to come because of the leaders of the world are seemingly just going right into it. And you can already see that there's going to be civil wars breaking out all over Europe. Right here on the border, you're having multiple players that people don't realize when they think about the border and the open border. Is we're talking about all these countries that we're talking about as far as players in World War. Right at the border, they're catching hundreds of Chinese men coming across. They're catching people from Afghanistan, Iran.
Where's the money coming from for all this? And where's all the money?
Exactly.
They have to be. Where's the money coming from?
Well, I don't know where exactly, but think about it. They print their own money. They don't really need the money. They just give it. It's meaningless money to get people to do things in the meantime. Right now, when the collapse comes, that's when all the receipts need to be, happening, and no one will care because everybody will be repositioned in the places planned out. And if you think about the U.S., for example, it was brilliant to open the borders wide up and allow millions of people, mainly from South America and lower North America. But in there, you can hide groups of people from all over the world. Matter of fact, I just showed the audience of some poor Africans that tried to come in through the United States, but they got caught up by the cartel. They got kidnapped. They got tortured. Their families were sent bills, basically, pay us the ransom. Not me. It's not my fault. I didn't take them for ransom, but they wanted ransom money for these guys. And they're coming. They probably spent all they had getting here, judging, by the values of different countries, and the odds of them being wealthy weren't that high. So, you have all of these different factions now boiling and brewing at the southern border with obviously assets being able to cross anytime willy-nilly and no one really doing anything about it. And then, I'm looking at this article right here. This is just out in left field. It just shows you the delusion, the deception, the illusion, and the dissimulation that we're all living in right now. The idea that technology is out of grasp that could make humanity have an easier time on Earth, and yet they're not using it. And this is just an example. It has nothing to do with anything. It's talking about the if I can't even say it, insectothopper, which is basically a flying dragonfly that was built by the CIA in the 1970s. So people are, recently in the 2000s, just barely caught up in the conspiracy theory world that there could be little bugs, birds, and things. And then now you got crazy people out there thinking nature is not real. But at the same time, some of it's not. I mean, some of these conspiracy theories have a lot of basis in factual information. And if they had this kind of tech, I mean, I'm showing a picture of it. It's just the regular size of a big dragonfly. It was a unmanned aerial vehicle from the 1970s. And that goes more to the point about what the world is about to experience in the form of a drone nightmare, because that is the new form of warfare, and they're going to display it. That's why they're trying to get people used to the idea of seeing these $1 million tanks, $1 million choppers taken down by a $50 drone and $30 worth of explosives. So things are about to get really hairy, especially, I think, going to start in Western Europe and move its way until it just blends in with the Eastern European conflict and the Middle Eastern conflict until that, I mean, there's nothing else to call that but World War III or a new world war. and they're going to force us into this. The question is how will they get millions of people over there to fight these wars? And they've already been kind of showing that. Speaking of, food availability, if you're a poor person that lives in any ghetto across the United States, any of them, any poor community, white, black, Hispanic, it doesn't matter, and the Marine Corps comes up to you and tells you, hey, I can give you $30,000 right now. All you have to do is go over here and sign up and go. But then all of a sudden, guess what? They fixed and reworded the draft. So when things get bad, like it is in Ukraine, where they're running out of men, young men specifically, they just institute that draft. And that draft doesn't just say all of the people from the U.S. between ages 18 and 26. It says every male and female within the United States of America. So they already have that planned here. You see these programs unfolding in different places and places.
Wait,
like
what's the age? What's the age there between which age?
18 and 26 years old. And that's the main age of all of the people that are coming across the border. So there seems to be
that's optimal fighting, optimum body performance too at that age, huh?
Those are also the mean ages of the people that are flooding Europe. So what we're talking about is all of the world's military age men being stirred up into a conflict. And the only reason that you would really want to get everyone involved is for massive worldwide population reduction. For what purpose? I don't know. But
the new grow zone in Africa that's evolving right now, that China is highly involved with investment, that new grow zone in the Sahel.
Well, let me ask you this.
That is the prize. You can't have a resistance there. All those guys who you're talking about in Europe, who you just described, used to live there. In Mali and Mauritania and Niger and these Chad, these areas there, they're all gone, man. They're up in Europe. Look at all that cropland that's free. There's nobody here to resist.
Well, let me ask you this.
That's the prize.
What happens if worldwide they start forcing carbon decline? Where do you think the grow zones would be if the worldwide globe started getting down to like 200 parts per million or something like that, or maybe 180 parts per million?
Well, that's extinction level event for all life on Earth. Extinction for everything at 180. I mean, plant, animal, lizards, reptiles, butterfly. It doesn't matter. At that low concentration at 180 parts per million, it's an extinction level for all life. And there would be some protozoa or algae that would survive.
You don't think they could create grow zones around the equatorial regions and use buildings and carbon dioxide machines on purpose just to keep all the grow zones? Or even better yet, where would everyone go if things began to get unbearably cold near the polar zones? I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but any of this could happen with just a few events, like an impact could do it. Something like Tonga could do it if it was on land. So any one of the land, volcanoes blew up all kinds of millions of cubic feet of debris and rocks. And what happens if multiple go off? I mean, we're talking about just like things that have happened in our past. But this civilization cycle, so to speak, seems to be more manufactured and managed compared to any other one, at least as far as we know, because we can see it in real time. Back then, we have no idea if people knew bad times were coming and they planned accordingly. But now we know it's happening, and that's just from human activity. You know how they talk about global warming as a human activity? Well, the mass extinction on the planet right now seems to be of human origin or human, doing. The population reduction, the infertility, all of this stuff, the movement of populations to put them in areas like, so just let's use the UK and Ireland for a small example. They have failing birth rates. They're going down. They're infertile. There's barely any of their population as it is. And now there's just as many or a growing population of people that don't like them and they don't get along. They have opposing views on religion, politics, social environments. So that is like literally a fire that someone stacked the wood up and put the kindling under, and they're just waiting for the right event. Now, what happens if Iran and Israel goes to war, and then the United States intervenes into Iran, which makes Russia intervene, which side of the fence do you think the Islamic groups around the world will side? They're going to side with the Russia BRICS, Iran, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, who's playing both sides of the fence just in case the other side prevails. And when you look at the stocks, right? All these stocks going up and down. The one thing you can count on making money from in the near future is weapon stock, military industrial complexes. They're not losing money right now. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure that their stocks are going up while all of the rest of the world's finances are disappearing or in decline.
It does seem that it is incredibly timed. And that's what as you mentioned, cycles. The time is known between the cycles. Because you cannot tell me, it is incredibly strange that Warren Buffett sells half of his Apple stocks ownership, half of it, and starts to crash the market on that sale alone. $277 billion this guy has in cash. Like, it's all out of the market. What does this guy know? He's called the Oracle of Omaha. Fun to listen to. He's got, some old school stories that have much relevance from today as they did back then. So interesting person to listen to. But, when you're one of the largest managers on the planet with that type of influence and flies on the wall, speaking of your dragonfly, there has to be something that he knew, because when I should send you the chart here, the cash pile from Berkshire, it's moving along, from 2010, it starts to jump up a little bit. And then, the cash is sitting somewhere around, say, 100 billion. And then this single year, it went up to 300 billion. So if you had been watching this, it went up to 100 billion, and then it went up to 300 billion. So even the trend itself as a cycle, slowly until all at once, or slowly until suddenly. Or what was this gigantic move here of almost an instant? You could see the selling that they had going off. It was very steep. Ransom, I got to send you this chart, but I'm just going to say it's strange. And there's a lot of other people out there selling an enormous amount of holdings. Like we saw the same thing in 2008 also. And the year 2000, or actually 1999 and 2000. Like you've seen this before, you see it again, but this one seems to be different. It seems to be not the one to just knock a couple points off the interest rate and slowly start like a small cycle again of growth. It seems like this one is poised to absolutely pull everything back to where we need to digitize assets, move to a new system of currency, and reset the entire system. And the only reason you would do that is if the current system that you have control of will no longer work in the new, I would say, pattern or vibratory awareness. As we come through this magnetic field in October, and in general, everything is moving on a higher vibration, and it sounds so woo-woo, like, hey, Sagittarius. But I am dead serious. With the energies that move, we've seen it through time and history. We go through this thing called the zodiac, and Ransom and I would talk about, if you follow all of those around, you get the long year. Like, things have been mapped out. So within that itself, in a 2,000-year periods, there's ebbs and flows of energies. And within a longer time frame, 6,000 years, there's different flows and ebbs of energies. Like, these have been mapped out, and there's cycles that are very difficult for like a few humans at the top to control everything that comes along with this natural change. They have to abandon the old system because it just won't hold state They're implementing a new system which they think they can maintain control of as the energy shifts from one, as I said, that decoupling rocket. You can't tell me somebody's jumping out this much cash like they knew something, absolutely knew something was coming. So what else is next then? If they already know this, and they were actually able to get away with it. So you're telling me somebody pulls off and sells $277 billion worth of their stocks in the last couple of months to get that total, and then suddenly the stock market crashes and they made hundreds of billions of dollars because when they rebuy those same stocks, they're just like 20 or 30% cheaper and they're going to run right back up to the same price. Like, you can't tell me that that's not insider trading. How did this person know exactly that? Or are they the ones moving the market and they're the market makers? Because people are talking, saying that single transaction of selling half of the Apple stock that he owned, which was how many billions, rattled the confidence of the market in that one single trade from that really famous Warren Buffett, Berkshire Hathaway, selling half their Apple holdings in one session. People saw that and they're like, what the hell are they doing? And suddenly it just cascaded over. And, I'm wondering if it's carefully scripted, really. I'm really wondering that, because all of these events seem that there's connected in, if you would do a stage play, bringing you to the next, act is kind of where I see it all. It's so scripted with most of the things, but if they're scripting it, then you maybe could see where it would move to next. So where do we go from here?
It's unknown if early man knew they would be the progenitors of great civilizations, or if they knew when their empires would fall and disappear into history. Fortunately for us as modern man, we can recognize that we are at the precipice, a point in history where we can see the cycle changing. Where we go from here is up to us.
How do you feed your families when the shelves are empty, the stores are shut, and there's no food available? What is the fastest, easiest, and most productive foods to grow? What is the quickest way to get somebody who has no skills at all up and running and producing very quickly? If you understand that we're at a point in history where it is no longer optional to be growing your own food, if you're like really freaked out and concerned because you've never grown food before and you don't have any skills, you don't know how to do that, but you know how important it is, then I want to let you know, however you stumbled here, you're in the right place. My name is Marjorie Wildcraft. I'm the founder of the Grow Network, and I have been the female leader in the survival and preparedness space for the last 20 years.
How to grow lots of food, even if you have no experience, are older and out of shape. This is for people who want the fastest and easiest ways to produce healthy and delicious meat, eggs, and vegetables. Because you know that growing your own food is like printing your own money. During this webinar, you will get status of global food shortages, how long the crisis will last, how much space you need to grow food, easiest, highest calorie foods you can produce, a complete plan for producing all the food you need, how to get started today, regardless of season. Marjorie will show you the fastest, easiest, and simplest ways to produce calories and nutrition, especially in a crisis and/or grid-down situation. The assumption is that you have no experience and you need to start producing food immediately. The most popular part of the webinar is the Q&A session at the end. So please come prepared with your questions.
Pro Clear Cleanse is the most powerful spray cleaner on the market today. No elbow grease necessary. Pro Clear Cleanse cuts through grease and grime like a chef's knife. Finally, the one cleaner that can do it all. Powerful surfactant cleaning technology cleans ovens, glass, porcelain, even polished wood. Environmentally friendly, less packaging and waste with no harsh smells, pet safe, child safe. 5 tablets equals 1 bottle of traditional cleaner. It's 5 months of cleaning for a fraction of the cost. Behold the grease-erasing power of Odor Crush. Simply drop a tablet into your bottle of warm water and shake it so it is evenly diluted. Spray the surface you want cleaned. Let set longer for tougher grease. Take a paper towel or a reusable cloth and wipe. Done and done.
Howdy, partner. You know people are having dinner and the smart ones are eating beef. Let me tell you a brief history, or more accurately, a beef history of dinner. Domestication of cattle happened around 8000 BC, but that's not when beef became what's for dinner. We've been eating beef since times before history. The earliest cave paintings have beef eloquently depicted on the walls. Those cave drawings of the hunt were for the aurochs, a primitive bovine. That's right, beef. Like I said, people are having dinner now, and the smart ones, well, they're eating beef. Americans want great food today, but we also want to have great food to eat if things go south in a hurry. Unlike most companies that take the cheapest, worst parts of the cow, then turn them into beef crumbles, whatever that is, they freeze-dry them in hopes that their customers will never actually try to eat it. Our premium beef cubes are sous vide, freeze-dried, and ready to be eaten right now, or in a decade from now. We want you to eat our beef now, so you can buy more. Prep with steaks, not with beef crumbles. This is a high-quality product. It's all American beef and 100% natural. None of that craziness of lab-grown meat and mRNA jabs. Our beef has a shelf life of 10+ years. This is high-quality cooked and freeze-dried beef for long-term storage or not. Eat well today and eat well tomorrow. Click the link in the description to get your Prepper beef with Prepper All Naturals, so you will always know what's for dinner.
Don't forget to sign up for the show notes to get information we sometimes can't relay on social media outlets. Sign up at oilseedcrops.org/MIAC radio show.
The trigger for that is you look for this. Is it scripted? Is it natural? You know, could it be organically happening? I'm not sure, but is the panic planned should be the better term, because all I would say is when the public gets into this fear phase and the media is pushing all this fear about you losing your account, you can't access, there'll be all these digital and online banking product problems like we saw with Robinhood and all those other exchanges that you couldn't get online, 9 total you couldn't get into. You know, but this will be for the banks and the actual online banking for the average person. Just in your savings account, debit card, whatever that is, to do that online easy banking stuff for yourself, like move funds and auto pay bills and things. They're going to run with that. Like, you can't do that. It's broken. The computer, you can't. The website's down. The whole industry's down. The whole thing, just like we saw. Now, once the media starts to push that as the fear versus the very next day going, oh, Japan rebounded 10%. Yes. Collapsed the most ever in history. And the very next day, it rebounds almost the most in history. That's not normal. So what are these events that we're looking at in time that are markers to tell you that the phase has changed, that something's amplified, it's quickening, it's going to go faster, the events are going to be a bit larger, they're going to be more like psychological, or, you know, you get that tunnel vision of events where you're just so overwhelmed at one time, you actually shut off thought, or you just stop thinking. It's like too overwhelming. Because you get all these massive events in a row, and then boom, it's just, I can't stand it. It's like the Calgon commercial way back. Hey, shout out for the people who understand the Calgon commercial way back in the day. And then what happened? And then what? That is the question we wanted to get into. Is the panic phase planned? Because if it is, they want you to do that, and then that's where the reset's going to come. Once something like that occurs, when they get into the panic phase where they want you to be worried front and center about your online banking not working, your debit card's not working, your credit card's not working, when they're pushing that actively in the media to get you to focus like, oh no, all my products won't work. I don't have any way I can get my money. I don't have any way I can get to the bank or even online. Once that gets pushed in the media, that is your signal that they are absolutely pulling the rug. I mean, pulling it. And when I say that, they're talking about an 85% loss on purpose, in my opinion. Well, where would the money go with that much? We would definitely have to have a plan to transfer 85% of the world's wealth in a single event or series of events over a couple of weeks. Like that just doesn't happen by itself. That's planned and coordinated, pure and simple. And again, that's, what we were talking and discussing last hour. So thanks for joining us here at Civilization Cycle and Revolution Radio. Also, thank you for allowing us to stream here, to originate the broadcast across many other mediums over on Rumble, Brighteon.com, Vigilante TV, Twitter, and a host of others. But Ransom, I think the play that comes with this next is, if we truly go down that road, and this was a marker that there's going to be an amplification, and the time frame for, you could call it the elections on October, or the planet, if the markets really truly evaporate like they plan to just redistribute all this wealth. Like, you want to be ready for that so you don't get shaken out in that redistribution, that you're holding on to whatever you can because you see the signals in front of you that it's there. Like, hold on, shoo, it's like diving under a big wave. Take a deep breath. And you're able to hold on to something as you move through, because I swear to you, they're going to go to real world assets and they're going to start digitizing everything of value under new smart contracts. After these banks fail and they bail in your properties, I don't know. How close are we? And Ransom, I'll come back to the question. I don't know if the panic phase, yeah. Okay, that's baked in the cake. You already know that's going to be a signal to look for. That's a no-brainer, actually. That they're going to hold on to this stability thing as long as they can with the interest rates and like everybody's talking about it, until they drop the shoe, literally. So, welcome back to the second hour of Civilization Cycle, Ransom.
Thanks. I was, thinking there when you were talking about all that, about the automation of the human domain and how that fits into that. And if you remember back, I'm going to say 10 or 15 years ago, you remember all of the people that were displaced out of jobs from the banks whenever they started going over to digital systems and better computers and online apps and all of that stuff. That's going to be the same as like the automation in manufacturing. The more that these companies move over to robots, when the time comes for everything to shut down, guess what? Who's not going to be mad? Who's not going to be in a big group mad they lost their job outside? The answer to that is robots. And for some real fear that they're pumping up here, I wanted you to check this out, because this will get everybody. It didn't last time because it was kind of confined to certain demographics. I'll just put it that way. But now we have a global alarm for monkeypox. And get this, it's supposedly spread by touch. So they're worried that the WHO is now claiming that you got to be careful because now there's a new health emergency that will just cross borders. It's going to be
who's doing this?
It's just mutated on its own. Who knows, man? It's monkeypox.
Who's the WHO?
I have no idea. No one does. That's the problem. But anyway,
Teenage Wasteland, the Who.
Right. Doctor Who is he's magical. So maybe that's the source of this
the magic monkey.
Spell.
Oh.
Right. So the magic monkey is now transmissible just by skin touch. And,
don't forget, Ransom, your best friend forever, the bird flu, jumping in to dance to the BFF right on top of the magic monkey. Oh, it's getting ridiculous. I'm telling you.
That one's just there to make you hungry while you have, sores and stuff. Guess who's not going to get it? Homeschooled kids. I'm just saying, a lot of these things. No, they have no limit to the amount of fear that they're doing. And all of that's going to keep everyone distracted. And this may sound messed up, but the way I look at it is, there's all these digital investments and there's the cryptos and there's all of these different things. But the one thing that no one realizes is if that time comes where everything doesn't work, you better have already bought basically everything you're going to need. So when you know that that happened, you're not going to go out to Home Depot or, Big Lots or Costco or Walmart or none of that stuff. Those are danger zones. Those are no-go zones when things go nuts. And recently, again, I saw people flipping out, and this is a new occurrence. This isn't the old one from a couple years ago. I forgot what state it is, but the food stamp system failed, and people were mad in the store about the food stamps not working. Now, that's just a small, part of the population. But guess what? They are going to realize that everybody with a bank account is in the same situation. In other words, if you're a rich person and you got a nice house and you got some land, if you don't have preps like the crazy prepper, you're in the same boat as the homeless guy that doesn't have nothing. Your cards don't work. You ain't got no food. You are sitting duck. And not only that, you're a target because you look like you have more than other people do. So what a bad scenario. So my point is whether or not there's a financial collapse or not, you better have already bought all basics that you need and have them already so that you're not spending your time with everyone else freaking out. You're trying to figure out what you're going to do next because you already have those resources taken care of. Let me see what I think I got sent a bunch of stuff here.
I did. I was trying to send you those images when I was talking during the break, and I got into a deepness on that. So I would ask you, these images that I was showing you, just the Berkshire Hathaway cash exchange was something overlaying with all of this problem. See, here's what originally what I had envisioned it as. So entertain me, everybody out there. I just wanted to explain how possibly two ideas were coming together with the Middle East disrupting the oil at the same time this stock market crash was going on. If that could like double or triple, quadruple the effect to get to what Ransom was talking about, where nothing works and you should have a plan, hence the ham radios, the GRFS frequencies. If anybody is interested, why don't we got to have the GRFS here? Let's see. No, that's on the Mac. Oh yeah, GMRS. Okay, it's 462.550. And that's a lot, one that most people would monitor. How are you going to communicate is the main thing. And how are you going to be able to satisfy your debt obligations to financial institutions that are closed or you can't pay them? So what if you have an auto pay mortgage and it always pulls out, or you have an auto pay bill, whatever it is, phone, whatever, anybody, there's an enormous amount of auto pays for bills, water, electricity, anything like this. If that ability is stopped, then what happens to you on the other side? Well, you didn't fulfill your contract because you didn't get those funds over to the bank for your mortgage. And they can technically, could they call a default? If the entire system's down, it wasn't our fault. Technically, would they say, well, you have defaulted on your property, you have defaulted on your debt, we are taking it back. And by the way, we're going to digitize it and give it a value, and then the value of the smart contract can be traded around the world. So the doubling of the effect of these two things. So I was going to ask a question, Ransom, so let me throw this one at you. When you're talking about Home Depot, you said they're going to be danger zones and no-go zones. How long after the banking shuts off do you think that would become a danger no-go zone? Would it be, because Lynette Zhang was saying very clearly, after the credit system goes down, after your bank cards don't work and you can't access your online banking and you're cut off from your finances, literally from your cards and from your computer and from your phone, they just don't connect to a bank and you can't withdraw money, and that is closed until further. We'll contact you. You're not getting anything out of that. She was saying 6 days. You need to be where you need to be. So I don't know if you would agree with that. Like, when does it become a very dangerous place to go, like a Home Depot? How many days after that event do you think?
Yeah, that's a good estimate, 6 to 9 days, maybe 9 days, because people will be wishing for the first 3 days, right? That everything, yeah, it's no big deal. It's all going to come back. This kind of thing happens all the time. There's going to be a lot of that. But the reason I was saying that there were danger no go places is because first, they're going to try to use money at those places. And then those places are going to close down, claiming that, well, their systems don't work and they can't take cash. And then following that are going to be people that just want to take what they know is still in there. And you don't want to be anywhere around any of that because I don't know if you realize this, but local police and municipalities generally protect the banks the most. In other words, if there's one people that they will protect all out, no matter what's going on, that's them. And it's not like, what are you going to do? Break in there and get anyway. It's like those are jokes. So nobody's really going to be going to the banks other than trying to find their offices to complain at, where they're not going to find people at. And they're going to be calling all of these, numbers that are supposed to be customer service. You get to talk to a robot. I'm sorry, our systems are down.
Oh, wait a second.
Blah,
They've
blah,
already
blah.
Ransom, they pre-trained us during COVID to do that exact thing. Everything was auto responder, everything. They've already used
Right.
to it. Every possible government service autoresponder now matches exactly that. Sorry to cut you off.
Right. And like you said, it's not just the companies and the services, the governments will do that. And then you got to start thinking about, well, people have been planning this for a long time. There's been people planning on it happening for a long time. And that's not just the crazy preppers out there or the continuity of government. There's other programs like InfraGard, which is a bunch of citizens who have weapons that they have of their own, they bought them themselves. However, they know that they're in a little group called InfraGard that's supported and funded by the CIA, in which they think they're clandestine operatives for the government. And those people work in banking, in utilities, in places like dams, power stations, places like that. And when you read the Patriot Act, you'd realize that those people have been given the go-ahead to protect that infrastructure with lethal means. And I'm talking about just regular citizens. You wouldn't think about it. And if you read and look into that, you would realize there's probably one of those guys in every local municipality, the government buildings. There's one at the police department. There's one at the sheriff's department. There's one at the power plant. There's one at the gas, company. There's one at the telephone place. Well, probably not anymore, but I bet actually that's still the case. Did you notice that, I don't know if you've noticed this ever by, circumstance or happenstance, but if you go into cities and you go look for the old Ma Bell building, basically, there's going to be a couple of them. They're still owned and operated and guarded like little government things. And, recently, because of the fires and the floods in Ruidoso, New Mexico, FEMA, I got to see operate in real time. So in other words, we have get this. Guess where they set up? I just want you to guess because I think you know.
In that parking lot behind the house.
No, close. There's an old Walmart that used to be down the road, and they moved to a super center somewhere else, but they kept ownership of that building. And FEMA rolled right into that Walmart property and used every bit of it. It seemed to be already set up for this to go. So this was plans laid out that they got to implement and use all their money. They set up the giant tents like they have down in El Paso that house the migrants. They had semi trucks that just showed up within minutes of each other. So there was a full-blown FEMA camp at the crossroads of all the intersections of highway that go to this town. In other words, if they set that up for a different purpose, you ain't getting in and you ain't getting out without talking to those FEMA people. So how about that? And, like if you thought you weren't going to, you were just going to go around it, you'll find a border protection and customs enforcement station and people at other paths that you might think you might go. So all along since 2001, while this nightmare of a crash in slow motion train wreck of Marxism plus, elite corporatism and crony capitalism all merged into this nightmare that we're living in right now. And then you throw the medical industry in the mix and the military industrial complex. Everybody's got to get a piece of the pie of, the crumbling system. And this does remind me of a time. It's when the Roman Empire fell. When they allowed the different Germanic tribes, different groups to come in and just basically house in their cities, and their armies were gone to other battles and other places, and the centurions or whatever, the army that stayed put, they didn't do anything, and they were destroyed literally from within. And not only just from within, but they allowed it to happen. You had the Visigoths and different groups move in. They just kind of camped there for long periods of time, and then eventually there was no Rome. And you're seeing these same kind of things play out in today's world, literally in the same areas, if you want to get geographical. And you can go back into ancient times with the Middle East disputes. Obviously, we don't have to go there. Everybody knows about them. But these are long-standing plans. I'm not talking hundreds of years or decades, but thousands of years. Groups that have maintained continuity are still players on the stage of the world. But the problem is they seem to be at a lower lattice, or at a lower rung of the ladder of power. And whatever's going on, it seems like everybody's involved in their own way, shape, or form. From countries, just falling into complete communism like Venezuela, to being completely invaded by outside forces. And I don't know if I can use the word. I probably can't use the word for YouTube.
Gold medal, baby. Gold medal.
Traded. I'll put it there. They were traded positions, because you can't use the R word when it comes to migration. But anyway, that same thing happened in the ancient world numerous times. Matter of fact, you can go to the ancient Egyptians when they were talking about fighting the Hittites. They would put out propaganda stones out at the edges of their territories, talking about how their pharaoh was completely demolishing the other army, when in fact they were losing territory until they also disappeared from the world. So they're gone. And for people of today to think that they're short-lived little empires that they're part of, or that they're a citizenry of, or is going to last the long haul, is kind of amusing in a way. It's very naive to think that any of the empires you see today will be here in only 50 years. And that's what I'm saying is happening right now. This is the third turn, kind of the final push for a world order. And it's step by step, and you can see it happening where it's weird. Like World War II, they had two narratives on both sides. Weirdly, both narratives came true at the same time, simultaneously. One group wanted a European Union. They got it, just not in the way that they thought they were going to get it, but it still happened. Everything that I've seen the elites predict, say that they're going to do, happens. So no amount of, conspiracy theorists thinking that they're going to, get in there and change the system for the inside, or wake up enough people that'll change the tide of these plans. I don't really think that's possible. The only thing that's possible is to take care of you first, your family second, and have a community of people that says no, so that their plot and their plan doesn't really work out the way that they want it to. Trying to fight them head on, I think, is just silly. You see how fast and how exponential new laws are being formed to get rid of human rights or individual rights worldwide, not just in Europe or the UK specifically right now, but just all over the place. It's happening. And if you don't believe what they're telling you, you can get in trouble. From Venezuela to the UK, you might end up in a prison cell being tortured over your views of reality. So reality itself is at stake right now, and what we view reality as. So I don't know, you can fight the machine, or you can build your own machine in competition. And I think that's the only way forward, is to learn the code, so to speak, how they kept telling everybody learn the code. You need to learn the code of the geopolitical situation and what they have plans for you in the future. And by all tales, across are all indicators. It looks like we're at that massive decline in population that will be helped by the world elite and governance apparatus.
See, that is your reality. That end of the world reality is not my reality. I'm sitting on a beach, and after we hang up, I'm going out for a head high session at sunset. That's my reality. So, what is reality anyway? It's in the mind that we've created for this. And I really almost go into that individual, that every person has created their own universe around them, idea of the multiverse that we're existing. We've created our own thin layer of the onion for ourselves. Have we? I am curious because, you know, as you move forward, it's almost these things perhaps we were thinking about. Did we manifest that by thinking about it?
Oh, don't get me
That
wrong,
I'm not
David.
sure.
I think plenty of people are going to be sailing off in the sunset, living good lives after all this. It's just which group of demographics are you going to be in that's with the people that run things, because, you know, they have plans for each other too. I think there's plenty of niches still. And I'm not talking about the end of the world. I'm talking about their reset of it. So if anything,
Yeah,
it's
the
the
reset of it.
beginning. It's the beginning of beautiful times.
Describe to me the kumbaya that they're selling. Sheesh. Not the end of the world. So would you want to go to the Sahel? Because I am looking at a map of the Sahel here, because Ransom, when you were talking, I was actually looking for some of the old trade routes of the Ghana Kingdom, the Aksum Kingdom, the Mali Kingdom, all these different kingdoms through time that were transiting across what is now super dry desert in the middle of what you would consider the Sahel or Sahara, that the climate had moved that much in the last several hundred years, not thousands, hundreds, that what was once grasslands and low forest is now nearly just dry blowing sand. So when you look at this, that has reversed itself. Now there's an enormous amount of water coming back, and you can start to see the whole system here in play again. Like, something also is changing. If you're looking for big signs out there, the information, especially in this last month, is interesting. On the natural side of things, if you're going to look at data-driven info, at the same time, all these things geopolitically are happening. The South Pole had the south. It was a southern disturbance of a high pressure system going in. It was a sudden stratospheric warming event, but in southern hemisphere and over Antarctica, which is kind of a rare one anyway. And at the same time, the different large edges of X-flares have just grazed our planet. And there's been an uptick in all these comets that people are seeing, and I'm talking large bolides. Like, there's a lot of things. The animals are behaving strangely. The insects are behaving strangely. A lot of things are migrating unusually, and they keep always making an excuse for it. Oh, it was the wind turbine. Oh, it was a boat motor. Oh, it was this. It was that. Oh, it was the wind. It was too hot. It was too cold. Whatever there is that is seemingly out of place or out of balance is moving, changing to the new, and I'm going to say, electromagnetic field on the planet. They are adjusting to that. The animal and plant life and insect kingdom is adjusting to that new magnetic field. We are too. That's called, the magnetic field's changing. So it's declining. Our magnetic field's decreasing 5% per decade right now. And I think that's sped up, actually. So 5% per decade, 10 years, 5% of Earth's magnetic field decline. So as we move into a different magnetic field state, the way that money operates will also change, because I talk about state, the vibration, the frequency of that magnetic field resonating. What does it create in the electrical sphere that can be measured in terms of like millivolts, for example, that ebbs and flows. So where is this going to go to? So many changes on the planet, electrically, magnetically, the way people are thinking. I'm really only can conclude that the magnetic field of a lot of people's brains, because of our changing Earth's magnetic field, those born 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 years ago are now in it, entering and have become immersed in a new magnetic field on the planet. Even 5 years, a 5-year-old child, if it's declining 5% per 10 years, then if a child 10 years old would have experienced a 5% decline. So by the time they're 20, it's 10%. By the time they're 30, it's 15%. Like, do you think they were born into a certain resonance? So the mind, the way it fires on itself and those synapses connect, it's an electrical connection, but you change the magnetic field and your brain literally doesn't work, or parts of it malfunction. So think about all the insaneness that we've had today. Maybe we've come over like a cliff, and we've reached that point of no return with the change of magnetic field on the planet and it affecting humans now. And again, this all fits into the apex at the top, like Ransom mentioned, with the population apex and then now subsequent decline for the rest of humanity, literally for a long time. And the energy as well. I mean, there's a lot more resources that could be utilized, but to get them very cheaply, or anyway, you could call that peak industrialization we've reached as well. Peak labor. They'll never need any more workers than we've ever needed probably 5 years ago. Never, ever again in human history. For the next 5,000 to 7,000 years, we will not need this many people ever again, ever. It's not going to bounce and dead cat bounce and double you down. And this is it. So we are at a gigantic, is an understatement, juncture in history. So where would you go? Like the Sahel, again, I'm coming back to the map. This is one of the areas that is planned to become the new growing zone on the planet because the rainfall has increased tremendously over this area. And I would mention Ethiopia, the new Renaissance Dam, if anybody would like to look that up, the new Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia. It's the largest hydroelectric dam in Africa. But in borderline, a few years ago, when the World Bank approved the project and it was in construction, it was one of the driest places on the planet. They were in a mega drought at the time also. Read the news headlines. Mega drought. So Ethiopia, incredibly dry, but they built this behemoth, largest hydroelectric dam in Africa. And then there's subsequent, as it comes off the plateau, there's subsequent dams that are planned for the step down. I think there's 4 more dams that are all going to be hydroelectric, providing constant electricity through Ethiopia to South Sudan and up into Eritrea and then up into Sudan as well, maybe connecting Port Sudan. But this is the beginning point of it. There's a huge amount of moisture. The reason I tell you that is because they had planned for this dam over 7 years to fill up. After it was completed, the concrete barriers in place, turbines are there, everything good. And they had expected it, the fill rate, that it would take 7+ years for it to fill up before it would be full enough that it could generate enough electricity with that head force. And it filled it, and it did that exact same thing in 2 years. But on the west part of Africa, around Nouakchott and Mauritania, you get down to Guinea-Bissau and Mali, all these places we're hearing about in the news with the resources of uranium, with Niger and Mali, these places that have had coups and asked the U.S. or the British or the French to leave, get out. No more colonization, no more people allowed in. It's our own natural native resources, and all of you foreigners out there, you're not welcome here anymore unless we say you are. Because we know who the bad stealers are. You're all out of here. Get out. And that has happened in all of these countries. But in addition to that, the agriculture is off the hook. It's some of the best yields they've ever had and, recorded since they've kept tabs of this from the, say, 1400s or so would be a good one. A lot of rice is in there, and a lot of sorghum there also. So there's above ground water resources increasing from the flow, and it's explained as the West African monsoon is on these massive cycles of thousands of years. It's a 2,000-year fluctuating cycle. But at the same time in North America, we have something called the North American monsoon that's on a fluctuating 4,000-year cycle itself. And also it has started to move. And this is the reason you're seeing a huge amount of moisture being pushed directly through Baja and straight up into the area where they had the Burning Man and all those floods over in California and Palm Springs, and that whole, hurricanes coming through and multiple arc storms, but it's more that lower push from the Pacific through and up into those dry areas where you are, Ransom, and it kind of getting wetter up in there. That push during the monsoons much, much heavier. So you're starting to see it globally. There is a shift going on. Now, is the magnetic field responsible for turning on the shift? That's the main question. Because if it is, then the magnetic field declining 5% per decade, anybody who's alive after 10 more years, you're going to experience at least 5% more decline in the Earth's magnetic field. So that's a given. Precise measurements, you can forecast it out, even if it stays at the exact same rate, which a lot of people think it's sped up to something like 10% per decade, which would be 1% per year. But so after you live 10 more years, then 10% of the magnetic field's gone. So literally 10% of your brain should be barely functional, because as you were born into a certain frequency in a magnetic field, there's a little variance on that. But if you go too far out of that state, I could see where the brain might not function as correctly. And we're starting to see that today. This is breakdown in just everywhere, like mentally. The entire dysfunction of the world is simultaneous. It's kind of strange how it happened. Like everybody literally just lost their minds. Is it because of, literally frequency around us in terms of Wi-Fi routers and all this kind of electromagnetic frequency coming out of devices and towers and all these things? Or is it a combination of Earth's magnetic field declining 5 or 10%? Unknown. 5's for sure, up to the 10's unknown. All these gargantuan weather shifts everywhere. New cycles, multi-thousand-year cycles, all triggering simultaneously as well. So we get all these multi-thousand-year cycles validatable now. At the same time, humanity has lost its mind. There's got to be something there with that overlay, and I do believe it's either solar system or regional star system based, where the region of space that we're transiting through is more heavily electrified. That's the question, because if it is, then that means we are on a bigger cycle, and there's nothing that really could be salvaged from this time anyway. So don't look at it as a collapse. It's a change that if we continue the present system, and I'll caveat, quote unquote, if we continue the present system, will not work any longer with the new resonance field that we're moving into. So the movement is going to be done to try to cut this here, and thanks for playing. That was the last vibratory field. See ya. The next 5 years or 10 years, we've lost 5 or 10% more magnetic field on the planet. The perception is going to be different for people viewing reality. It absolutely is. You cannot tell me, so give me some stats on an MRI machine. Somebody had mentioned this also. Okay, you go into an MRI machine, then why don't you have the same effects that you would for the Earth's magnetic field stepping down in strength, like lowering magnetic field intensity?
I have your answer.
Yeah, go. I was hoping you did.
And you know what? I listened to you and Mike talking about this and the questions that he asked you. And it made me realize that he probably wasn't aware of some of the current technology that's out there. So whenever you get a MRI,
throw us a comparison on the tech for that.
All right. Well, an MRI is just shooting waves of microwave, like magnetic waves through you to get a picture. It's kind of equal as far as the wavelength, but in recent technology. See, he was asking why that doesn't affect you. Well, it's not designed to affect you. It's designed to take a picture of what's inside of your body. Let's skip over to some technology that is designed to affect the way that you think. And we'll just start out with this one. Nanomedicine researchers develop new technology to control neural circuits using magnetic fields. And they give you all kinds of cool diagrams and stuff. But essentially what it's saying is that if you put out a magnetic field at different pulses and at different, let's see, basically like frame rates that you would be dealing with imagery or sound, of sight. This puts it out at different frequencies, at different levels of intensity, in certain patterns. And what they can do with that is take control of a brain, to put it, bluntly. And that's what this study's all about. It's about taking control of rat brains using, here, I'll tell you exactly right here. It says researchers at the Center of Nanomedicine in South Korea have unveiled a technology that can manipulate specific regions of the brain using magnetic fields, potentially unlocking secrets of high-level brain functions such as cognition, emotion, and motivation. Now, if you've kind of gathered that, so they're saying that they can control how you feel, when you're hungry, when you're not hungry, all of that's inside that study. And mice are just like people as far as the brain goes. So if they could do it to mice, they can do it to primates. They can do it to you if they're not already doing it. Here's a different one about something similar. Wireless activation of targeted brain circuits in less than 1 second. So in less than 1 second, they were able to use different frequencies of electromagnetism to make fruit flies move and fly them around where they wanted them to fly. So that is physical control of the brain. Now, I realize that this study and this article is about a fly and that this other one is about a mouse. But what I'm saying is when has the technology that they're putting in things like physics.org or Omni or any of that other stuff new? It's never new. It's always old. And I don't know where they got it or if they recreated it. But if they did it, there's other people working on it, probably in DARPA, that can do that to a human being. So you know what a LRAD is, right? That's a thing that makes people basically overwhelm their senses. It's so much sound, it messes with their eardrums. They can't concentrate. They have a microwave gun that can make you poop yourself. And that's a different.
Bring that to a party.
Actually, that's a different one. That one's not microwave. That one's ultra low frequencies. But they also have a microwave one that can burn your skin. So they can affect a crowd negatively with pain, pooping themselves, whatever, all of that stuff. But when you get into the real science of what they're really doing behind the scenes, they're using nanotechnology and electromagnetism to control animals. Now, these animals in these tests didn't even have any nanotech inside of them. What they're saying is that they can use nanomedicine just with the electromagnetic waves, and that's it, both of them. Now let's skip to a totally unrelated article from Zero Hedge, Nanotech in Dentistry. Another blessing by science coming to a clinic near you, and it gets down about how that field is, going to likely incorporate nanotechnology and advances. And it talks about, how they can be fixing your mouth. It always comes out as something good. The chip in your brain is to help people that can't move their legs or they can't talk right or whatever it is. We'll help them. You just need to get in it. And people are still tripping on that old style of technology that Elon Musk is promoting. That's just a joke at this point. They can put nanomaterials. Matter of fact, I saw a video off of your Telegram feed that was showing little nanoparticles using lasers to operate on single cells. That was on your Telegram channel. I saw that. And then there's graphene oxide that there was a big debate about. Well, it turns out, yes, that's in stuff. It's in all kinds of stuff. And it can be moved around and assembled using electromagnetic fields. Now, I'm not going to say I told you so, but years ago, I talked about this exact thing where that there was no longer a need to physically put a chip into a life form at this point with our level of technology. At this point, you can put it in the environment as microdust, of nanodust. They can ingest it, and then all the materials needed are in there. All of the precious metals, all of the plastics. They even have spider web compounds found in humans at this point. There's forever chemicals that have different things that are just, everything's drenched with our civilization, to put it lightly. Our technological world has drenched nature. So all of these nanotechs can be remotely activated and assembled. They can make things by remote using electromagnetism. Now, the question is are they waiting for a time in which the Earth's electromagnetic field is so weak that their technologies can be used at an easier way? In other words, they'll have more distance or more potential effect on the people that they're beaming this kind of technology on. I mean, think about it. If the electromagnetic field of the Earth is really strong, it would be hard to counteract that electromagnetic field. It's too massive. Yet, if it's in a weakened state, these technologies may come into effect, and you may not even know how you got the nanotechnology in you. Did you eat it? Was it injected? Did you go to the dentist? Or did you volunteer for something? It doesn't really matter. All of the material needed to create what people think are science fiction ideas is actually a reality, and people are going to have to start getting used to. They are like 50 steps ahead. They are 50 years or 100 years ahead of you, and they've been planning for hundreds of years, if not thousands of years, for this exact point. Now, I don't know if they all knew the combined picture of the future, but all of the, Fabian socialists, Marxists, and then you add the technocratic end of the elite on the end of that, and that amalgamation is what we're dealing with in this reset. So I'm not saying that the world's ending or it's going to end. It's being completely remapped and engineered from the ground up at this point.
Yeah, and when you were showing that slide from physics.org there of control neural circuits, I wasn't looking at it as you were with the diagram. In my mind, that is a set of news stories, and the way I'm looking at it, it's a dissemination of information with the heartbeat tracking analytics to see on the left side, where some cellular structures are. It looks like what you would do to blast through social media to see what your organic reach would be. And then it has all these metrics. All I'm looking at is news stories being floated out, and that trigger in the brain to get that response is the news story that is the neural circuit control is the actual news story to get into your brain to do what it does.
Let's get woo-woo. Let's get woo-woo with that. How many monitors, televisions, smart devices out there have the potential to be updated with this kind of technology to manipulate the electromagnetic field around them, while simultaneously keeping track of a 3D model of spatial, like basically the spatial awareness of the net or the algorithm, or even a human being that's using the peripherals to look, because you have phones. You have gaming systems, computers, smart devices, even the meters outside. They're all putting out an IR beam all the time, taking a constant picture of its three-dimensional surroundings, including everything in your house, every person in your house, where they're at, when they're at. And you combine all this technology along with flicker rates, colors that they know affect the brain, subliminal messages, sounds and tones at different frequencies, and then on top of that, an electromagnetic field that's literally manipulating how you feel, how you act, and how you move around. So that's some pretty hardcore stuff. And, of course, someone will say, hey, that's too far-fetched, but if you were using deductive logic to solve a mystery, you'd be looking at all this evidence and you'd be coming up with the same idea I'm having, that they're combining all of these technologies. And that's what we're about to have to deal with is, literally fighting your own, what seems to be your free will, but it might not actually be. Now you add to this drama with fake people, with fake stories, with fake things that you can have natural empathy for. So all the TV heads are going all day, burning out all of their good endorphins and hormones and chemicals in their body because they've been looking at fake people in fake situations and having fake empathy for that. Where actually it's real empathy for fake things. And by the end of the day, when they go to the supermarket, they're irritated. They don't know why, because they've used up all the positive things about their persona all day long, dealing with social media, dealing with television, news cycles, your neighbors, whatever it is. All of these fake ideas, social constructs, and social engineering that people are really worried about right now, like petty things that don't matter. How is any of those topics literally going to feed your family? And they're not. So this is the distraction. It's the technology being used to control you. And, for those that say, oh, they can't do that, they're showing you papers, peer-reviewed papers and science that says that they can and they do these experiments. So why would you think that they wouldn't use that on you?
Yeah, because I'm looking at that saying they're trying to disrupt your brain and the way you think with an overwhelm of these gargantuan stories. So they are controlling your neural circuits by doing exactly right. Yeah, whatever response it is to delete dopamine, increase dopamine, whatever it is. But that response that you get through that story, that is the disruptor. So you could change that word from nanomedicine straight into headline story, control neural circuits. The delivery device, everybody's thinking that it's a physical thing, but perhaps it's a mental and a mental thing too, where the news stories are coming into your brain at that rate in interpretation that it actually changes the chemicals, like you just mentioned there. So the way you would feel, the way you would think. And then also at the same time as there's a decreasing magnetic field change every single day, it's slightly lower. Then you start to get into these, the future. I was laughing when we were talking about nanotechnology. I said, what if you had bad nanobots that were all focused in and on your teeth, and you had to say dental surgery, and they're like, put the bad nanobots in there, and those are, teeth hurt, where you're getting drilled, and you got all these nanobots on your teeth. Horrible. That was a terrifying image that you sent me over there in my mind when you were talking about nanobots and teeth. Scaring me. We need to crack through the hologram or the holographic reality, I guess. But please do us a favor. We just have our new podcast website up and running, civilizationcycle.com. Feel free to contact us. Emails at the bottom. Buy us a double espresso so we can work late into the night if you feel that's something worth your time. And the episodes are there as well. So take a look at the site. Yeah, I was just looking for feedback as well. So civilizationcycle.com, and also the newsletter at the bottom. If you enter your email there, you can get our show notes, and it's really just show notes. Like tonight I sent out, I think, 8 bullet points of last week's show. I just condensed it down. Okay, what did we talk about? 8 things. So that's the same thing tonight. If you enjoyed our content, I'll send you a list of 5 to 8 bullet points that I thought were super interesting. And then, you start your day that way. You can share the information. You can do research with it. You can start conversations with it. You can share with others to get their conversations started. So, yeah, support our broadcast. Civilizationcycle.com. Ransom, take it out.
Oh, I was just going to say, you reminded me about all these digital pictures that I create for the shows. And what's weird about it is we don't ever talk before the show. So all the images, even though they seem relevant, I was just making them, and sometimes you're on the same trip as I am when we come on. But I was going to tell everybody, if you go to the website, you've been loading that gallery up, and I was going to send you a SD card.
Buy me a coffee. Yeah, buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. That's our buy me a double espresso, because I like to work late in the night. I like to get pumping when I got, some music and a double espresso. Get us a double espresso. So that is buymeacoffee.com/civilization cycle. And yeah, there's a gallery there of the artwork that Ransom's created right there.
I was going to tell you, I was going to make a SD and send you. I've already made thousands of these pictures over the last couple of years on our shows. And it's like a whole thing of a progressive idea almost, depending on what we're talking about. And you guys don't even get to see half of them, because some of the stuff that the AI makes is just out there, or quite frankly, a little scary. Some of the ideas that it pops out weirdly when I didn't ask a certain thing, or I didn't put the prompts in, it gives me stuff, and it's almost like the algorithms are trying to, really communicate past what you're giving it. And it's about to be a runaway nightmare as far as that goes. I was going to tell you, I forgot while I was babbling. I loaded all those pictures you sent me if you want to break those down in the last couple minutes.
Yeah, I could. Let me refresh my browser. I'm actually on the Rumble stream here in the Adapt 2030 channel to see what Ransom's on the live here. Yeah, okay, it changed. Yeah, that's just a freighter from the 1800s. So when you think about, the Titanic era, this would be a steamer freighter. Like you could, hoist sails, but it also had steam engine with it. It was like a dual fuel, using the wind and also using coal at that time, bunker fuel. So that's just an old nostalgic. That's down the Suez Canal in the 1800s, and that's all it was a series of piers like this. But when I was over in Venice, I saw something similar with those pier docks going way out to all these different islands out there when we got on a boat and went around. Like those wooden docks, it's very much like that. You can see those forever stretching in the distance in Venice too, with the channels. Because we went out to Murano and Burano, and then that's exactly what we got into, was like miles and miles and miles of those pillars under the water there. And hidden chemicals in beer. The weed killer glyphosate was found in 14 out of 15 beers. And they were tested. And I'm not going to read the names off, but if you can see the chart there, Qingdao was number one with parts per billion at 49.7, so nearly 50. And the lowest on there was Samuel Smith Organic Lager, 5.7 parts per billion. And that's it. Be careful what you eat too, and during this time, you should be inspecting your electrics or your digitals. Like for me, I have the ham radio here.
Channel mode.
Sales, we were working with hams today and doing some comm checks. So having all the batteries recharged, you want to think about, you're taking inventory of your stored foods, because something is very strange with what's going on in communications with the ham people, also the banks, and there's something else coming. This bank failure is just the first step of a few more to follow, but they're going to get so much larger as they step down. So take an inventory of life, basically. Give thanks for everything you have. And thank you for listening. If you like our content, civilizationcycle.com. Sign up for the show notes or buy us a double espresso. Thanks for your time. Bye for now. See you next time.